Okay, welcome, welcome. I'm assuming most of you are here for Fit Model, right? Yes? All right, our newest division. We'll introduce ourselves. You've got four of us here. We'll probably start off with just what we know about Fit Model, what's been discussed, things we've seen in different workshops and stuff. And then if we have time, we can actually help teach some of the posing, if that's what we want to do with the athletes. So starting off, I'm Becky Clausen. Among other things, I judge, but I also competed in bikini back when this was the posing style. So, and as did these ladies here. So I do actually have some experience with it.
Yeah, I'm Jenny Clapp, IFBB Bikini Pro, but yep, I started back in 2009 with that man over there teaching me this very same pose. So I am very familiar with it as well.
And I am Jessica Delias, also IFBB Bikini Pro and Olympian, and same thing. I started back in 2014, so this was the posing when I started, and then when I turned pro as well.
All right, is he gonna hang out?
You gonna introduce yourself, Steve? Come on. The best Fit Model poser in the world.
It's scary, I know. My name's Steve Payne. I'm a promoter of the NPC Southern Muscle Showdown and the NPC Southern Natural Showdown. I've been teaching Fit Model posing, honestly, since 2009. Bikini posing since 2009 also. So I've been doing this for a minute, and when he needs any help, I'll be more than glad to help. But I'm never going to look as good as them, but I can stand next to them and hold my own.
Yes. All right, so let's start off by talking Fit Model. I'm sure you guys have seen the video from Tyler explaining the new division and what our criteria is. It is a fit physique. What you may see online, it does take work. It does take effort to develop that physique. The example of what we want to see in this division is Ashley Kaltwasser from about 2015. And I can attest that she definitely worked out for that physique. She definitely dieted. It is not easy to come up with that, but it is a more attainable physique without the extreme hourglass shape. Like you see these ladies with a real tight waist, the curvy glutes. That's more bikini. It's not about extremes in Fit Model. It's about shape and having a little bit of muscle, but I would say it's more about an overall look. The one thing with Fit Model in my mind is that nothing should stand out too much. Like no shoulder caps, that's big in my mind. Like you do not want defined shoulders. No etched in glutes, of course, and really glute development, but nothing extreme, and really no outline to the glutes or anything. Should flow right into the leg, which should be fit, but this is not an extremely muscular division, nor is it an extremely conditioned division. So you can have, obliques and a tight core, but we're not looking for the etched in six pack, no lines in the legs and the quads, no severe separation at all.
Yeah, I'm basically this, I guess you could describe it as, like she said, kind of the gateway division, but think more beach body, like fitness model, like you see in a magazine or on the beach or something like that. That's more of the look that it'll be.
So as far as the presentation on stage, if you guys know anything about the other divisions, the tan, the hair and the makeup, the jewelry, everything is going to be very similar to bikini. So I would follow any of those guidelines and any of those examples. The suit is the big difference here, and they are being very strict on the suit. The suit needs to be appropriate and have the proper coverage. The head office has been working with several suit designers, which hats off to them. They've been very diligent about getting this right and sending sample patterns and testing it out and getting feedback from the head office to ensure they're giving you a suit that meets the guidelines. And they're being really strict about this and instructing even us judges, if somebody does not have the right suit and the coverage is not appropriate, you can take them off stage. You can disqualify them. It's something we used to do in bikini at one point. So it has happened in the past, and they're really serious about this. And the requirements for the suit mostly relate to the bottoms. The tops are just like a bikini suit, I would say, same cut. Yes, without connectors, and it's all fabric, no rhinestones, no patterns, no velvet, things like that. So just plain material. The bottoms have to be sufficient coverage in the front, nothing too low. If you see the examples that they shared online and on NPC News Online, some of the girls, their suits were a little low or a little ill-fitting. That's something we don't want to see in any division anyway, but especially in this division. Since we're starting it off, we're going to do it right, we're going to be strict with it, and your coverage has to be appropriate in the front. Same in the back, it needs to be 50% coverage. You can have the scrunch back to the suit, but it needs to cover enough of your glutes. That's something I cannot stress enough. If it's not enough coverage, it might be an issue. And I would say if you have a question, get someone to look at it. Your coach should be giving you feedback if it's appropriate or not, but be very careful on the suits. Anything to add on that?
We're sitting with Debbie Mannion at the women's workshop, and she was talking about how the suit was going up into the glutes, such as a bikini suit. They don't want that. They want it to sit outside of the glutes, or on top of the glutes, I should say. So we're not going up. So even if you get the suit and you're thinking it's going to cover, it needs to stay out. That's where Bikini Bite's going to be used, but it needs to stay, that's from Debbie Mannion herself, that it needs to stay on the outside like that, not going up.
And then my recommendation, they do say that a little bit of the scrunch in the back is okay. I honestly recommend to not do the scrunch at all, because no matter what, if you have a scrunch, it is going to go up a little bit. So if you don't have the scrunch, it'll just help prevent that and just make sure that you absolutely have the coverage.
And I know people had concerns initially about whether or not this was going to be a flattering suit. I think it's perfectly flattering, and not having the scrunch in the back it doesn't impede my ability to judge you at all. It doesn't, I can see what I need to see. I don't need to see all of it, and I certainly don't need to see it all, like with scrunch and all of that. So you'll look fine on stage. It'll be completely appropriate, and less is definitely not more in this category. Anything else you guys can think of that's...
They were even talking about the top, the same thing with the top. We say that in bikini, that you want to make sure you have coverage because it helps balance you, but also for this division too, they want the more modest cut, so we're not looking for, or they're not looking for, excuse me, a tiny little triangle on the top. Think about the bottoms trying to be modest. That's not going to look balanced if you're having a teeny tiny top. So make sure the whole thing is looking a modest look, and it's balanced.
Good call. And that's true for really any division. I think smaller is not better on top either. It can make you look imbalanced, and balance is a part of the criteria here too. So let's talk about the posing. Before we actually get into the mechanics of the posing, let's talk about the fact that it is different from bikini. In what we discussed at the women's workshop, you have two poses. Bikini has two poses, but there's also transitions. There are not transitions in this. And the general idea, right, is to keep moving. Don't stop in your poses. So you have a front pose, and you're going to move and keep moving to the back pose without pausing. And I think it's great to work with like a posing coach or someone to help you move in a way that you keep your balance, everything, your posture's up and lifted and everything, and you can transition to the back without stopping. That's something they're really gonna watch. So it's just a front pose, just a back pose, and nothing else. So it really simplifies posing for this division because your presentation and your comparisons will be the exact same. You don't have to do anything different. No extra, no fluff, nothing. Just one pose to the front, one to the back, bring it back around the front, salute, and you're off. All right, well, before we get into mechanics of the posing, does anyone have any questions? Down front? Okay, so she had a question about the material for the live stream, the material of the suits. I heard no velvet. I heard that specifically, but I think hologram is fine, what Steve said, because we actually saw some examples of that in the first LA Fit Show. And by the way, on the LA Fit Show photos, some of you guys probably noticed that the winner, even her suit was used as an example of what not to wear. That is nothing to disparage her. It was the first show out of the gate. She did her best. With the information she had to work with, she wore a suit that she thought would fit, and we were still clarifying at that time. So none of that is to say that there's anything wrong with those athletes. They just were the first ones out of the gate. They were our guinea pigs, so. Okay, good question. And who else? Yes.
Yeah, that's going to be different on each person. So that's where you're going to really need to work together with your coach and with the suit designer and to make sure that you are getting that 50% coverage.
I guess as like a rule of thumb, think of it just like a diagonal straight across the glute. Like this would be 50%, if that makes sense. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit more or less fabric depending on your personal physique.
Yeah, this might be a division where borrowing suits may not work so well because you have some leeway with figure, with bikini suits, you can kind of shape them, but since 50% we're so adamant about that, the chances of you getting a suit too small, I don't know that I'd want to risk that. But the good thing is these suits should be more reasonable and affordable. Yes. Good questions. Who else? Ask us anything about the physique, about the posing, the presentation. No questions? Oh, yep. Yeah, who wants to do a fit model presentation? Seriously, the best in the business right here.
It's going to be pretty much a forward stance. The feet are relatively close. You have slightly staggered stance, but it's going to be relatively close. And I always suggest go with your good side.
Oh, I'm sorry. Start that over.
If your good side is on your left side, you're probably going to tilt like this, and this hand will be down. If your good side is your right side, it's going to be like this. It's a twist of the hips. There's a reason for the twist of the hips. It's because it's going to give the illusion of a smaller waist. So you're going to stand like this, and then when they say face the rear, you're literally just bring the leg in, flip, and this is the only pose that will be very similar to bikini. Your feet are around, shoulder width apart. Push the hips back. We do not want to see you bend over. We're going to have our hips back. I always like to say I'd like to be able to set a drink right here. We're going to be right here, and when they say face front, you're literally just going to come back right to your front pose.
And put that number on that dominant hip, please.
Yes. If your good side is this right side, the number's on this right side. If your front pose is on the left side, the number's on the left hip. Because if they cannot see your number, they cannot see you. So that's pretty basic. Everyone's going different. You know, everyone's transition is going to be slightly different, but this is just a very simple, very basic front pose. And this is what we used to only teach way back in the day. Now it's evolved with bikini poses, but now they brought this back, and it's very, very flattering. It doesn't look good on me because I'm a guy. It will always look better on all of y'all, way better than it does on me, but you have to also own that pose. And so, yes. Mm-hmm. It's easiest that way. Otherwise, you're going to travel all the way around to come here versus just going, hey, I'm here. I'm here. That's it. Again, pretty simple. If I can do it, y'all can do it. Y'all are much better women than I am.
From the front? Yeah, I wouldn't say so. I mean, have you ladies heard any different? It's more about shape, I think, from the front. And it's not about an X frame, certainly not. It's not about an extreme hourglass shape. It's just more about flow, I think. And there we can see the abs, we can see some conditioning. You don't want to see like separation in the legs or anything. And we're going to be looking like shoulders, making sure shoulders aren't capped or overly developed, things like that. But I would say it's not really about seeing the glutes from the front. And the glutes don't have to have as much density either as what you would see in a bikini athlete. And in the back pose, that's something that was mentioned at the women's workshop. You don't want to push as much, say, as like a bikini athlete. You're just kind of setting yourself up there. You know, nice posture, a hip tilt to keep your glutes nice and high, but it doesn't have to be like a push or a tensing of anything. It's much less extreme than bikini. What else? What questions? Yes?
In that in-between exercise, I compete in bikini before, and I'm trying to figure out how can I tell if I would fit better on fit models than in bikini.
So you can ask our opinions. Coaches, judges, we can give opinions. There's also the option to try both. I know you can't cross over, but we just talked in the natural session before this. Like sometimes there's shows that are an open show on one day and a natural the next. You could try in the same weekend. You could just try like bikini and then fit model if you wanted to, or just pick different shows and pick the different divisions. The people that have shown me their pictures that had questions about where they fit, if you've got a lot of upper body or even any like a lot of the shoulders or anything, that's a big thing that I say, no, you're probably best in bikini. Too much in the quads. I know Coach sent me photos a couple weeks ago, and everywhere else the girl looked fine, but she has some quads to her. And I was like, you're either going to have to fix that posing to make sure she's not standing and like pressing on her quads so much to flex them, or she's going to have to go to bikini. And they fixed her posing and she looked a lot better. So they could adjust her posing so she fit the category better. But those are things that stand out to me. Like if there's any body part that is too much, I feel like it's not going to work. This is about flow and about everything being like the same level of development, conditioning, things like that. What else? You can ask us anything about this. Should we demo the poses, like, and actually talk through them? How about that? Okay, who wants to? Steve did his run. You ladies want to hit the front pose? Okay, so they're doing the front pose. You can see they've got, their feet are a bit staggered, and they have one hip back. Their shoulders are facing front. For the hand or the foot that's forward, their arm is hanging nice and relaxed, and they're not doing any kind of flexing up here. They're not hitting their lats, which you sometimes hear people say, which is crazy even in bikini. They're just hitting a nice pose. The abs are nice and tight and pulled in, nice tight core. You see the shape here and how there is a little bit of flow to it. Doesn't have to be extreme. And we're looking for the same development in the legs as in the upper body. And again, no splits in the quads or anything, no harsh abs, and certainly no really rounded delts. Anything you guys would add to that?
Yeah, so getting into the pose, how it should feel, you can either have your feet kind of in line with each other, or you can stagger them a little bit, and how much you do that just is going to depend on you a little bit. I kind of go in between where it's almost to the back. But the main thing is sitting into that back hip, pulling up tall, twisting, and then let everything else kind of fall where it is. Whatever leg that you have down and out, that's the arm that goes down and out.
And for me, since my waist is a bit wider, when I was doing this pose, I tended to bring my foot a little bit more forward, so that way I could really twist this back hip back and have the appearance of a more narrow waist instead of coming straight on this way and then twisting back. I still have a little bit wider waist, so that's why I always brought mine just the tiniest bit forward. This leg, I don't have a lot of weight on it, so that way I wouldn't be pushing into it and having too much quad pop or, any calves or anything popping crazy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If you look at the example picture of Ashley Coltwasser, her feet are almost even, and she's just kind of like Exactly. You have to go by your physique, and she's almost just sitting her weight to one side with a slight twist. She's always had a tiny waist. She can do that. This is just like any other division. You're trying to pose in a way that flatters your own unique physique, and most of us do need to twist like that. There's very few people that can get away with just standing straight on. So that twist is usually necessary, but it's about your individual frame and your physique as to what you want to look like or what you should look like. All right, ladies, if you'll transition to the back. Nice and easy. I think that's what I like about this the most. Like, this is posing I could do. Like, this is great. And as you can see, they have their chest up. Nobody is leaning over. They're straight up and down. There's an arch to their back to keep their glutes high, which you always want to do. And this is for anyone in any women's division. Keep your glutes nice and high. We never want to see that creased or anything like that. And you always want to show shape. So that's what they're doing here. And they're not pushing back too far. And it's not I'm going to ask you guys to describe this, but you know how bikini is more of a tension in the glutes and maybe more of a strict pose? Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, like for bikini, if you do it from the side, you're going to feel a lot more of a squeeze in your lower back because you really want to get enough arch. You also might, let's say, rotate out at your knees to show a little bit of quad if you don't have very much quad development. But for fit model, it's really just a slight arch, so that way you're standing up tall, but you are showing a little bit of more shape in the glutes, but you're not doing anything crazy with turning out your feet or anything like that. It's just a lot more, it's actually more comfortable of a pose than the bikini pose.
Yes.
And probably one final thing about the back pose, they're not engaging their glutes. That is the single worst thing you can do in a back pose for any women's divisions except for women's bodybuilding. Every other women's division, the glutes should be relaxed, hamstrings slightly engaged, but glutes are completely relaxed to create that teardrop type shape.
Yes, if you squeeze your glutes, all it does is make them kind of boxy and square, and if you've got any conditioning issues, it'll show for sure. Now, also part of Fit Model is the walk to the back of the stage. So we may ask you guys to walk, and the reason we do that is if it's close at all, we see differences in conditioning when you walk. You guys all know, if you've looked at your physique in the mirror, you can tell when you're moving around, you can see, oh, there's a little body fat here, I'm holding some water, because you can see it on yourself. That's a tool for us as judges. When you walk, we can see if any of that exists on you too, because sometimes you can look like one athlete standing still, and the minute you walk, we can see that, oh, maybe she's not quite there. So we may say, walk to the back of the stage. I'll have them demo. Nice, slow, deliberate walk, not too slow, but you see the most important thing here is their posture. Keeping everything up and lifted, their hips aren't tucked under, their pelvis is still, their hips are back. Everything is nice and tall in this pose. And what we're looking at is mainly, in this pose for me, I see conditioning. I see conditioning on the lower body. So you want to keep that nice and posed in the proper posture. And when you're walking, see how they walked very deliberately? If you walk fast or if you step hard, it's the same thing. You see stuff move, right? And stuff jiggles that maybe shouldn't. So they're being very deliberate with their steps to the back. And then I'll say face the front. You'll just hit your front pose. And then walk forward. And this, you can walk a little bit faster, but see how they're crossing their feet like that? That is a very simple trick to get a little bit of sway to your hips, a little bit of style on stage, because that is important. And I think that's the simplest thing you can do to look like you have some flow and some style.
Yeah, for really this, just like bikini, when you are doing the walk, that little cross in front is going to give you more of that shape they're looking for. Something you never actually want to do is do anything straight on. So if you have that little bit of twist, it's going to show more of that shape. And then same thing for when you're in your poses, or if you're transitioning, you never want to just be straight to the front. You always want to have a little bit of twist and curve.
Who has questions on the posing? Good question. So she asked in the back pose, where should your feet point? Straight ahead, out to the side? I think it goes with what you said, in that it depends on your leg shape. And if you've got quads, if you put your toes out, we'll see it from the back in your back pose, and that's not part of this division. So I'd say start with your feet like this, because we don't want to see the quad shape or any excessive quad sweep. So I would say point straight forward. I'm not sure if I can think of really, unless you have super thin legs, where you would turn them out.
Yeah, if you have very thin legs, then that little bit of turnout can help you. But if you don't, then I wouldn't do the turnout because it'll just show maybe too much muscle.
What else, guys? Anything? About suits, about posing, about shows? What?
Speaking, I don't know if you'll
Your front foot step out. Do you want like toe pointed or flat foot?
That's a great question. So she asked the front, like her foot that's forward, do we want the toe pointed or flat foot? I've seen Ashley pose like that, and she's a little bit on her toe. I think it's just the way she stands and like how far apart her feet are. And that's fine. I only noticed it when I really went to look at like how she was hitting this pose. What do you guys say?
I would say for the most part, your straight leg, that heel is going to be off the floor because you are going to be sitting into the opposite hip. So if you do have your foot flat like this, you can't really sit into that hip well because you'll end up crunching into your waist. If you just pull up a little bit onto that toe, it's going to just give more of that better look. So to some degree, that will vary. I would say that heel is going to be off the floor.
So you can see their feet are just a little bit staggered. Feet aren't super far apart. I feel like the further apart you get, the less balance you have, and plus it just throws off like your proportions. Does that make sense? You're welcome. What else? Yes, it mentions this is about balance, but it is not about the hourglass like these ladies have. Like they have a nice tight waist, they have a little broader shoulders, curvy legs. If you look back at bikini back in the day, which is what they're using as an example for this, like look at India Polino. She's straight up and down. There is no curve to her in her torso at all, but that's okay. That was acceptable. And I know Sandy and I talk about that a lot. We really want to have that be acceptable, you know, that you don't have to. That's kind of what differentiates it from bikini. It's not that extreme hourglass. Like, should you have a tight waist and a toned waist? Yes, but it doesn't have to be the extremes. And certainly if you don't have broad shoulders, I think this is a great division. Because there's only so much you can do if you have narrow shoulders in bikini. Then you gotta like build the muscle out, and that's a rough road. So I think this will be more accommodating, maybe to smaller frames. Good question. What else, guys? Yes? Yeah, this is getting back to being more of a gateway division. I always say that in a sport as extreme as bodybuilding, the athletes will always push it to the limit. And that's true whether you're a bodybuilder or you're a bikini athlete. Everyone wants to be their best and be better than their best. And it's just the natural flow of things that divisions will push the envelope and they'll change. And, you know, girls want to add more muscle. And the more time the division's out there, they want to grow and add more muscle and see how conditioned they can get. And that happened even with bikini. I feel like as an organization, we're pretty set now. Like the divisions are where they are. Bikini's not going to get bigger or harder. It's going to stay right where it's at. But we have this gateway to division that is about being fit, but it might attract people that say, are working out in the gym and maybe haven't been bodybuilding very long, but they really want the stage experience. They can get started. And I think actually Ashley's trajectory over time is a really good example. She started in Fit Model. That's where, essentially Fit Model began with her in what was bikini. And over time, as she grew and finally matured, her look matured to where she is today. I think it's a great gateway for us. And I also think it's going to welcome some of our athletes that have struggled to keep up with bikini. I personally know of several athletes who are like, oh, I'm taking all of 2025 off. I need to build. I just don't have enough muscle. This came out and they're like, I'm back in the game. Like, I'm getting out there, I'm competing, which I love to see. It takes a long time to build a quality physique, but we all should start somewhere and should have the ability to start somewhere. I'm so thankful that we've developed these other divisions, or else I would have no place in this sport. It was bodybuilding, fitness, and figure when I started, but at least there was figure, because I was not going to be even it wouldn't matter what I did, I was never going to be a bodybuilder. So I like that we are opening this division up to be more welcoming, and I think also with the posing and the suits, it's welcoming a more mainstream audience too. When I first competed, and I'm sure for you guys, when you first put on that little bikini, were you like, what in the hell? Like, I was like, how is this supposed to fit me? Like, I wore it all wrong. I could not believe. It was the tiniest little thing I ever wore in my whole life. And that's shocking to people. And, there's a lot of people who want to be fit. They want to get on stage. Maybe they're more pageanty or things like this. I think this welcomes them into our world. And who knows, maybe after that, they're going to want to progress into other divisions. But yes, long story short, this is to be more attainable, maybe more appealing to mainstream, and something that, yes, welcomes more people into the community, maybe from different groups, different ages. And then once they taste bodybuilding, maybe they'll just progress from there. You're welcome. Yes. Yes, yep. And I would say the jewelry is the same as what bikini would be.
Yeah, the jewelry will be the same. So if you were in our class a little bit earlier, we talked about stage presence. We talked about the jewelry. It's something that's just going to accentuate your look. Just little dangle earrings that aren't too long, maybe a bracelet or two and a ring, just a little something to add a little bit of shine basically to your look. Since for these suits, you can't have any crystals at all. So your crystals will be your jewelry.
I've noticed a few suit designers starting to add things to the Fit Model suit, so be careful with that. Don't, make sure even if it's on there, request that it's not. Any kind of slide. The slides are fine. They've said slides are allowed, but they're starting to add slides that have just like a tiny bit of sparkle, a little bit of rhinestones. Don't be the person that they make an example of. So just, make sure that whatever you have has no bling on it at all.
Yes. No, so she asked if the bottoms are biker shorts. It's still a bikini bottom. It's just going to be more coverage than bikini is. So here, turn around. So basically 50%. So think of that diagonal 45 degrees across her glute. That's a good rule of thumb for 50% for everybody. Yes. Yes, so she asked about the classes for Fit Model. That will be the same. So you'll have your novice, true novice, open, masters, all of those. And you can do any of those classes and cross over between those. You just can't cross over between Fit Model and another division like bikini or wellness.
What else? Brand new division. Any more questions? Yeah.
Pretty much, so she asked when the shows are. Pretty much every NPC show is going to be doing Fit Model this year. So you can enter into any of the shows. They'll all be carrying the Fit Model division. Do you have a question? So she asked how wide to space your feet in the front pose. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit wider than your hip width because well, for most people, because you have to be able to sit into that hip. Some people can get away where they'll stagger their feet a little bit more and sit into it. But for the majority of what I'm seeing so far, this is going to be more flattering and give more of the look. So it is going to be maybe about an inch or two wider than your hip width.
Yeah, too close, you're going to end up. Too close, you'll end up with a bend in that front knee, or the straight leg, I should say. So you want it to have just to be able to extend and not have a lot of weight in it. The one thing I have noticed, I do this, and I have a client that does it as well. When I put a lot of weight into this leg, it hyperextends. So be careful of that. Have your coach would be noticing that, but that the leg isn't like looking awkward and bending funny. So that would be the chance where you might put a soft knee and make sure nothing is flexing, but also not hyperextending.
Yeah, who's doing Fit Model? I love it. Good. Anybody competing soon? Within, let's say, 16 weeks in prep? Oh, I love it. Very exciting. very, very hungry, she says. Yeah. Now, out of that group, how many of you will this be your first show ever? I love it. See, and that's great. Yeah, bringing in more people. And I will say we're having a lot of people that have really wanted to get into competing, and they really want to do, let's say, bikini or figure. But this division is so great because typically if you come into this and you really just don't have a lot of muscle development at all, you'd have to take 1-2 years of hard training before you even really get on stage. What's great is now you can get on stage sooner and do Fit Model first, because the only way to get better at competing is to compete. So you'll get that stage experience more before you work up to the division that you maybe are really aiming for. More questions? You guys have great questions. Well, that can't be true. Anything you could think of? Yeah. What was that? Yeah, you can do off the rack. You can do an off the rack bikini. Yeah, perfectly fine. A lot of off the rack bikinis will fit, as long as it complements your physique, that's going to fit the criteria of the bikini that you need, which is also great because it makes it more, honestly, affordable for people to get into it sooner too, instead of having to spend $1,000-something on a suit right away. So